Hello everyone, this is Major Green, and a few days ago I rewatched the movie Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, which by the way I think is one of the best Star Trek movies, especially because it holds up so well even till this day, and also the story of this movie is the most Star Trek-y of any of the movies in my opinion, because it has no villain to defeat, it's not an action movie, instead it has an actual problem to be solved, it also has some social commentary, it promotes animal rights, and it's also just a fun movie overall. It's almost like a comedy movie. So anyway, as I was rewatching this movie, I noticed something interesting in one of the first scenes, in which we saw the USS Saratoga encountering the alien probe and trying to communicate with it. The captain of the Saratoga has a remarkable resemblance to Michael from Star Trek Discovery, and she seems to be exactly the same age she would be by the time of this movie. She seems to be something like 20-30 years older. This movie takes place at 2286, while Star Trek Discovery begins in 2258, so about 28 years before. And so visually speaking, it is a perfect match. So I did some digging and tried to find out what exactly do we know about this captain of the Saratoga, and surprisingly we know very little. She is not mentioned by name anywhere, and she is not credited in the credits at all. And by the way, she was actually the very first female Starfleet captain that we ever saw in the history of Star Trek. And I do not mean canonically, I mean in the order that we saw Star Trek in. She was actually the first ever female Starfleet captain. And so, as I said, she was not credited and her name was never given on screen, so she could be anyone. And there was never any reference to her in any other Star Trek. Now, the actress who played her also played Geordi LaForge's mother on Star Trek The Next Generation, and she was also a Starfleet captain there. However, she cannot possibly be the same person because The Next Generation took place 80 years later. Maybe she could be her daughter or her granddaughter, but there's no way that she's the same person. So I then tried to find her in the expanded universe. Maybe there's some book about her or something like that. Usually, because there are so many Star Trek books, very oftentimes they take some minor character who appeared in one episode or in one movie and write a whole book about that, but this time surprisingly there's very little about her. There was a small reference to her in one of the Star Trek novels in which her name was Margaret Alexander. However, Star Trek books and novels are not considered canon. And so I think this leaves the room for her to possibly actually be Michael from Star Trek Discovery. Now, as for the question of whether or not it should be her, and this is a difficult question because on the one hand I always say that it's a bad idea to connect things too much because it makes the universe seem smaller. If we keep running into the same exact people all the time, it kind of makes it look like there are much fewer ships than there should be. And so from that perspective it's better to not have the same characters pop up again and again. On the other hand, since she only has a small role in this movie, then it can simply be like a sort of a cameo or an Easter egg, and that's actually kind of cool in a way because she's just a minor background character in this movie and not a major player in the plot in any way. Therefore, I do not think this takes away from the movie anything. Instead, it would only add an interesting Easter egg if it is indeed her. And because of the physical resemblance, because she looks so much like Michael would 20 years after Discovery, then I can't help wishing that it is indeed her, because that would really tie in nicely. It would fit in so well that I can't resist this urge to make this connection. And that's why I do kind of wish that it is indeed her. I think it would only add something to this movie. It will make it a little bit cooler to see that even a minor character has some kind of big story behind her. And that's why overall I kind of like this idea. And now to the question of whether or not Michael would actually ever get a command of a starship. And again, that's a difficult question. When I reviewed the very first episode of Star Trek Discovery, I said that she is completely irredeemable, that she should never be put into a command position again. I don't think any Starfleet officer could ever trust her again. However, in the history of Star Trek, we've seen many times characters doing very bad decisions and later redeeming themselves and be forgiven. And even Captain Kirk himself, he basically committed mutiny in Star Trek 3 when he stole the Enterprise and he attacked fellow officers and disobeyed orders. And yet in the end of Star Trek 4, he was completely forgiven for all his crimes. He was given a slap on the wrist of being demoted from Admiral to Captain, which is something he wanted anyway, and was again given command of a starship. And all of that because he saved the planet in this movie. And so we do have the precedence of an entire crew committing mutiny, attacking fellow Starfleet officers, sabotaging starships, disobeying orders, and yet still getting another command later. And so apparently Starfleet is a very forgiving organization. All you have to do is save a planet once and then all your sins are forgiven. And so in theory, if Michael does something very honorable, if she saves the entire Federation, maybe she's the one who helps negotiate a truce with the Klingons. If she will do some kind of super heroic action in that kind of scale, then maybe Starfleet will indeed give her some sort of pardon and erase her record. That would also erase the continuity mistake with the original series, in which Spock said that there is no record of a mutiny on a Starfleet ship, and yet he didn't directly say that there was never a mutiny. Therefore, it's possible that she was simply cleared of that charge from her record. Also, there were in fact other instances of mutinies on Starfleet ships, including Spock's own mutiny, and yet he never mentioned any of that, because I guess if the mutiny was justifiable, like the mutiny against Garth of Izar for example, then Spock does not consider it a mutiny, and therefore if Michael's record was really cleared, then he would not mention that again in the future. So that would fix that continuity error. And so I think by the end of the series she will commit so many heroic acts, or maybe one huge heroic act, that Starfleet will actually forgive her and erase the mutiny from her record, which would allow her to actually become captain one day. And so it's possible that she later becomes the captain of the USS Saratoga and encounters the alien probe in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. And I do think that it would be kind of neat, it would be kind of cool, and so I do hope they will somehow reference it. Maybe she gets command of the Saratoga in the very end of this show. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you think about this. And let me know if you enjoy these types of videos. Do you want me to make more videos like this with speculations about Star Trek? Let me know in the comments and we can continue the discussion there. So that's it for now, and I will see you all next time.